let's talk about a distinction between prescriptive and descriptive grammar rules. So prescriptive is just like what it sounds like. It's prescribed. It's what you have to be taught, usually in some sort of formal schooling, what's prescribed by some higher authority that thinks that they know how you ought to use language, right? We often actually get this in writing, where there are certain rules that you use in writing that you wouldn't use or you wouldn't have to follow when you're speaking. Importantly, for prescriptive rules, we don't just learn them by listening to other native speakers talk. They're not something we just naturally pick up. They're things that have to be prescribed, right? They might sound proper, for example. Here are some instances for English. Don't end a sentence with a preposition. So a preposition is a word like with. And so here is an example of someone speaking and not following that prescriptive rule. Great job, kids. You guys have skills that even I'm impressed with. Right? Sounds perfectly natural. You would absolutely say this. This person did say this. But the children note, did you just end your sentence with a preposition? He sure did. So this makes it a prescriptive rule. Don't end a sentence with a preposition, because clearly we don't follow that, or at least this native speaker doesn't follow that in the way that he naturally and conversationally uses his language. Another example of a prescriptive rule might be, ain't is not a word. Well, in some dialects that's true, right? But in other dialects, ain't is very much a word. I ain't doing that, right? That's absolutely something that someone would say. So in order to not use it, they have to be prescribed this particular rule, right? So that's a prescriptive grammar rule. Now, the difference between that and the other is a descriptive grammar rule is describing what native speakers actually do. They end sentences with prepositions. If they have dialects that use ain't, they use ain't, right? So here's an example. The dwarf is who Sarah first talked with. Sounds perfectly fine. I absolutely would say that as a native speaker of English. It ends with a preposition. We're not following that prescriptive rule. The descriptive rule would be that English speakers can, in fact, end sentences with prepositions just fine, because the descriptive rules are what we pick up from being native speakers of the languages we're learning, how people actually speak in their conversational day-to-day interactions. They don't have to be explicitly taught to follow these rules, because these are what they've internalized during language acquisition. So for example, this is a little snippet of dialect between Sarah and Hoggle here, and Sarah says, "You're horrible." She's kind of mad at Hoggle. And Hoggle says, "No, I ain't. I'm Hoggle." This is perfectly natural for Hoggle to say. His dialect uses ain't. Right? So for him, ain't, use ain't in this particular position, in this configuration, is a descriptive rule. It's a descriptive grammar rule for him, right? So descriptive rules are the ones you don't have to be prescribed, because you naturally follow them, and these are the ones we care about, how people learn them for language acquisition.